Great. Thank you all so much. It's an honor to be here. I really should have gave a bit more of an interesting trivia question. Like how old am I? Any case, everyone, thank you so much for being here. This is the tale of Kalechi, a shortened version and kind of revamped in a way. I hope you enjoy it. All right. There once was a small boy named Kalechi who lived in the land of the cheetahs. Now, Kalechi knew he was not a cheetah. He knew that his eyes weren't the same as his siblings, how his claws weren't the same as them, and how he had no tail. But he believed that the more he tried to be like his cheetah siblings, the closer he would get to becoming a full cheetah. So every day in the vast open grassland, he would follow his cheetah brothers and sisters and try to run just as fast as them. Try to take down a gazelle with just a bite as them, and try to groom himself just like them, using his tongue to lick away the dirt and parasites. But more often than not, these efforts left him either sick or tired. Then one day came that he went too far. He came back home bloody, distressed. And Mama Cheetah, she saw all of this. You see, Mama Cheetah had a special relationship with Kalechi. She found him in the Uju Ofia, the bad bush, a place where in those days humans left their children, those that they thought were cursed, they left them there to die. And Mama Cheetah found Kalechi and took him as her own. And she didn't care that Kalechi didn't have the same eyes as her. She didn't care that Kalechi didn't have the same claws as her or the same fur. It was enough that he was her son. So on the day that she saw Kalechi come back home, having gone too far, she decided to gather all of her cheetah children to herself and tell a story. And that story went like this. Long ago, there once was a small planet that lived among the stars. And this small planet was populated by pollinators, butterflies, and bees, as well as flowers of a great variety, sunflowers, roses, tulips. And they all lived in harmony. You see, the pollinators carry the pollen of the flowers from flower to flowers, creating more flowers. The flowers offered up their nectar to the pollinators as food. And they lived in peace for such a great time until a drought came. The worst this planet had ever seen, leaving everything brittle and cracked. You see, this drought was enough to make the pollinators fly much, much slower. But the flowers, they were dying in great numbers. In seeing their friends perish, the pollinators promised to look across the planet and search for water. And the flowers, overjoyed, gathered up some nectar, put in a container for the pollinators to take with them on their journey. And so the pollinators were off, and they were searching and searching and searching across the small planet, looking for water. Days and weeks went by until finally a small bumblebee saw something green, a tiny speck on the ground. And that bumblebee dove and started digging little after little. And all the other pollinators saw this bumblebee trying to dig, like, what is that? And then they saw the speck as well, the tiniest blade of a leaf. And so they dug and dug and dug, and that tiny blade showed even more specks, and even deeper, tiniest drops of water, moist soil. And as they kept digging, the water started to bubble up, first becoming a small puddle and then becoming a pond, enough for the pollinators to refresh themselves and collect as much water as they thought was necessary to bring back to the flowers. And when they gathered enough and all were ready, they flew back home joyfully. But as they got closer, they saw this giant fixture in the sky, a giant flower, and they thought, what is that? What could have grown in these conditions? And then they got closer and closer, and they saw that this giant flower had wiggling parts to it, which that's odd. And as they got even closer, they saw these wiggling parts were roots. Roots of their friends, flowers exposed to the dry and dusty air. Their friends had stacked themselves into a giant flower. Seeing this, the pollinators rushed, and holding up the water they told them to drink. But the flowers refused, saying they didn't need their help. They were enough to bring back the rains. Go away. Confused, the pollinators went to the flower bed to see if there was any flower that waited for the water. When they got there, they realized what had taken shape in the time that they were gone. The flower bed was filled with weeds. And these weeds were repeating over and over again that the pollinators weren't coming back. They're getting water for themselves. In fact, the flowers are the ones that even caused the drought. They weren't big enough, tall enough, or beautiful enough to even bring a single cloud. And the flowers believed them. And they tried to become something big enough, beautiful enough, tall enough to bring the rain. Knowing this, the pollinators tried again and again and again to convince the flowers who they were. But the flowers did not believe them. And having no roots to anchor this small planet together, it broke apart and became no more among the stars. When Mama Cheetah finished her story, she walked up to Kelechi and asked him if he understood why she told this story. Kelechi thought for a bit and told her no. That night, as he rested on his mother's back and stared at the stars, it dawned upon him that he didn't need claws or spots or even a tail to become a cheetah. It was enough that he was his mother's son. Thank you. The end.